So unless you are lucky enough to still be with the first person that you ever fell in love with, I think everyone has been rocked to the core by Rejection by these 4 words. We need to talk. In the moment, I'm not gonna lie, those words feel like you're standing in front of a car crash in slow motion, and your stomach drops, your heart is racing, and your soul gets like 100 pounds heavier, and there's really nothing anyone can do about it. But looking back, those words are so pivotal because they have now introduced a 100% chance that your life is going to change. And after watching this video, you will learn how to address these emotions and progress swiftly through the change curve and embrace this redirection. Today, we're going to unpack life's beautiful gift of failure, rejection. Hello, my name is Anthony Samuel. I'm a trained scientist with a passion for leadership, and this is my channel on a documentation of me moving through my journey to be the best leader on the planet. So, rejection. Yeah, I really love this topic, and rejection is one of the reasons why I actually became a scientist. And by the end of this video, I think I will give you the tools to better handle rejection, and it will make you both a better leader and a better scientist. But first, I think I need to set the stage on exactly what rejection is and teach you the mechanics of how to move through it. So, what is rejection? I think rejection is a difficult question because, well, Webster's definition of rejection doesn't really capture the magnitude felt when you're being rejected. Yeah, you can see it right here. At the core, I think rejection is really just an investigation into your self-respect. And when it comes to not being accepted into a place or a group or a team or a relationship, you have to then ask yourself, do I have enough self-respect to accept that I did not have the qualifications to meet the requirements that were set before me? When it comes to romance, do I have enough self-respect to not to want to be with someone who doesn't want to be with me? Do I have enough self-respect to know that there is a relationship that will serve me better if I'm willing to let go of the relationship that is no longer serving me? When it comes to your failed scientific endeavors, do I have enough self-respect to accept that maybe I'm missing information that is necessary for success? Do I have enough self-respect to understand that maybe I don't have the knowledge for the answer, or the skills, or the resources, or the experience for this answer? Rejection is simply asking you, do you have enough self-respect to progress through the situation? And it will keep asking you this question until you progress through enough iterations of the change curve. So I think one of the reasons why society loves sports so much is because we get to experience this change curve through other people without the pain of going through it ourselves. We love the adversity, the beginnings, the shortcomings, the redemption, and all these emotions are associated with how athletes and teams deal with moving through this change curve. It's actually been studied in tennis players that their ability to move through the change curve was correlated with even the smallest margins of excellence. And we're not talking about, top 20%. We're talking about the difference between top 5 tennis players and top 25 tennis players. I've taken a small clip of the video titled "The Mind of the Athlete," and we're gonna go through it real quick, and then we'll dive into it afterward.
What they actually found was this: the difference between the top 5 ranked people in the world and the others in the top 25 was their thinking. In the 10 to 15 seconds after a point had been scored in tennis, those athletes that thought positive things.
This is not just positive thinking. This is watching someone's ability to accept the past and allow it to influence their present, whether it's positive or negative. Now we're going to go through the change curve. And if you look at the change curve here, you can see that the first step is shock. Shock is the first step of the change curve, and that is really like what happened, the initial gut punch. And what I like to do is ask myself, can I get more information on what happened? And sometimes I'm never going to get more information, and accepting that is a good enough answer. I know people talk about closure and receiving closure. Sometimes the closure is there is no closure, and we need to accept that because we may not have all of the information. The next step is denial and bargaining, and this denial and bargaining is the beginning or the introduction of your imagination into the story. And this is when your self-respect is really being put on the table. The next step or phase, frustration and anger. I think this is the step when your ego is hardest at work. You need humility to manage this steep drop in morale. And immediately my ego begins to ask me or tell me, how could I allow this to happen to me? What did I miss? This is often when we need to ask ourselves, is this decision pro them or anti me? Is this decision that's being made where I'm being rejected, is this pro them or anti me? And 99% of the time it's pro them. The next stage of this change curve is depression. And the harder the depression hits is due to how steep this frustration curve is. Because you go from a quick transformation of how could I allow this to happen to me into why did this happen to me? And when you start telling yourself, why did this happen to me? You remove all responsibility and agency from the situation. And the key to getting out of this pit of depression is accepting that this did happen to you and not allowing this downward spiral to go steeper and steeper and deeper than it needs to be. And when you take accountability, you give yourself the agency to pull yourself out of this pit of depression. The next step is experimentation. And this is kind of the turning point because you're beginning to pick yourself up and figure out a new reality. The thing that I think a lot of people miss is you begin to oscillate between depression and experimentation. This is when you need to have the confidence and remember past victories to where you have oscillated between this experimentation and depression and pushed yourself out of the depression into the next phase, which is your decision. And this is the most important stage of the change curve because you have now officially decided that you're going to move on. You are walking into the next phase of integration, but if you take too long in this decision mode, you may get tired and slide back down. So push on into the next phase, which is integration and acceptance. And this is when you acknowledge the past, but the past is part of you and you're no longer avoiding it. You've accepted the past, but now you have transformed or evolved into something new. And this is a great time to celebrate because you are actually reborn and you now have the ability to make peace with the situation. So now that we've set the stage on exactly what rejection is, we're going to walk through a little story. Our story is going to involve a young boy. His name is Roger and he's a tennis player. And his life's dream is to become the best tennis player that the world has ever seen. And in his reality right now, he's in a game, a very close game, and he needs this next point or else his dream is going to be slipping away from him. So he plays the point. And out of nowhere, he returns the ball, but the ball goes somewhere that he didn't want it to go. And this is the first step of rejection. Shock. An undesired outcome. What happened? He's losing his point and his dream is slipping away. The rumination begins and he can't believe it. His self-respect is on the table and he begins denial and bargaining. Oh, well, this point doesn't matter. It was just a lucky point that they got. And then he watches the point go on the scoreboard and the point is awarded to his opponent. Reality is sinking in, and now his original denial is turning into frustration and anger. He tells himself, I can't believe I hit the ball out of bounds. Now I have to get another point just to be even. And the crowd begins to cheer for his opponent. And he's entering the next stage of the change curve, which is depression. Maybe I can't be the best tennis player in the world. I've lost this point. How do I even know I can win the next one? It's his turn to serve now. And he looks over at his coach, his friends, his family in the stands, and the scoreboard. And he remembers that this is a new point, and he has all the support behind him to take on the next one. I don't know if I can win the next point, he says, but this new point is anyone's for the taking. He makes a decision to give this next point the same attention that he did the previous one. He serves the ball, down 1 point, and the game continues on. The past is now integrated into the present. So let's replay the story, but I want you to put you in Roger's shoes, and I want to replay a recent rejection that you may be struggling with so we can answer the questions together. So you're thinking about your rejection right now, and let's talk about when you first heard the news. What happened? What were your senses telling you? Were you able to get more information? Or was the answer that this was all the information that you were going to get? How did your body feel when your self-respect was on the table? Did you recenter, embrace yourself for the fall before frustration and anger? What were the hard facts that were based on your senses and the information that you gathered? Frustration and anger. Are you here right now? This is when the ego is the most fragile and when you need humility to manage this steep drop of morale. Did you miss anything? This is often when we need to ask ourselves, is their action pro them or anti-me? Depression. This is the stage that we hang out in the most. The impact of depression comes from how steep this frustration curve is. I know it's easy to say, why did this thing happen to me? But is there a way you can regain agency in this situation and pull yourself out of it by asking yourself, what do I have control over? Maybe you're still in depression, but the next stage of experimentation is on the horizon. You're picking yourself up and you're beginning to establish a new reality. Understand that you may stumble backwards and relapse back into depression, which is okay. That's expected. But this is when you need to have the confidence and remember past victories and lean on your support system and ask yourself, how can I gain momentum? Soon you'll be in the decision phase. This is the most important stage of the change curve because you decided to move on and integrate the past into the present. Sometimes when you're walking into this integration, it takes too long and you may get tired and you may slide back down, which is okay. But this is when you need to ask yourself, am I ready to accept the past and control the future? And lastly, the best part, integration and acceptance. The past is now part of you and you're no longer avoiding it. This is a great time to celebrate and ask yourself, what did we learn from this experience? Part of integration acceptance is really understanding that you're not going to be perfect, especially as you increase your abilities. When you're in the realm of other high performers, you're going to fail a lot. You're going to get rejected a lot. And to be honest, if you're not getting rejected, you're probably not aiming high enough. I've included another clip. It's a little long, placed it in the description, but this is of Roger Federer's commencement address at Dartmouth University. And it was a very majestic speech about perseverance. And he talks about even through winning 80% of his matches, he's only won 54% of the points. Top ranked tennis players lose almost every other point on average, he says. And he goes on to say, which I feel is the most important part of the speech, is when you're playing a point, it has to be the most important thing to you in the world. But when it's behind you, it's behind you. And this mindset is really crucial because it frees you to fully commit to the next point. And full commitment is important because you can't expect the best if you're not willing to give your best. I've seen people allow this beautiful gift of rejection cause them to have a new fear of commitment and squeeze opportunities of happiness and growth out of their life. Dating people who are comfortable and convenient, but won't help them grow or become the best version of themselves. I've seen scientists afraid to take risks because of the fear that an experiment will not go as planned. And on the flip side, I've seen scientists purposely take hubris risks to appear bold, only to hide the insecurity of failure. They'll say to themselves, it was a long shot anyway. Neither of these serve a purpose because you don't get the progressive data that you need to move forward. Commit to the next opportunity as if the last rejection didn't even happen. But also as if you have the self-respect to give yourself every opportunity to become the best version of yourself. Because whatever happens to you, you are the kings and queens of your castle. And it may not be your fault, but it is your responsibility. Rejection really sparks innovation. So embrace the change. You are both the sculptor and the sculpture of your life. Every day you're chipping away at yourself to define and redefine who you are. You can't improve the chisel that's needed to shape you in an improved version of yourself if it's too dull or if it's too soft. Yes, it hurts to lose parts of yourself, but rejection is a chisel that will turn you into a masterpiece.